What remarkable thing comes to your mind, apart from your appointment when you were young?
Yeah.
Because you consider a lot of young men. As we were speaking off camera, you told me there was a lot of young men who were incorporated in his cabinet. Correct. But what do you remember him for that is remarkable from the top of your head?
I think one of the things that people may not know is that Moi had the memory of an elephant.
True. Very true.
You know, he would remember people in any part of the country. You go to a village and Moi would identify somebody by name. Even within a crowd, he would single out somebody and say, "Wewe Mr. Flani, ama Mama Flani." And he would ask very personal questions about somebody, completely out of the blue. So that was something that was very interesting. And that did help him in the running of his government, because he was a stickler for detail. Moi would not let anything go through his fingers. He would read, for instance, if it is a cabinet memos, he would read the cabinet memos, and he would challenge you if it is originating from a ministry until you have convinced him that what you're presenting is logical and can be funded. Then he would say, now we are ready to approve that. So that was one thing about him. The other thing is that he was an early riser. President Moi would call you even as early as 5 in the morning. At least I would experience that. I know you did. Perhaps you did. That he would call you just out of the blues at 5 in the morning and say, Bwana Flani, I expect to see certain things done. By 7:38, can you be in my office? Now, you have to wake up, prepare, and be there that time so that you can respond to the queries, or he can give you the direction that he wanted to give you. So that was another quality about him. Waking up very early, being very precise with his timing. If he told you, I'll be at your station, you know, he was always touring the country. So if he said, I shall be in Chavakali market by midday,
he'll be there.
At exactly midday,
he'll be there.
The president would be at Chavakali.
Okay.
So this is some kind of discipline that he had, which is very rare to come across. Because most of the time, once somebody is in a big position, they tend to believe that they don't have to be disciplined on time.
They're the beginning.
But the leadership to him was that you must lead by example. So discipline in terms of keeping time, and then in terms of precision or something else. And also he was very humorous. Don't be cheated. As firm as he was, this head of state had a very good sense of humor.
Okay.
He would sometimes get people's ribs aching with laughter.
Okay.
But don't mistake it. Remember, he could also fire you on the radio.
Yeah, that was one of them.
At 1 o'clock.
Yes.
And you'd realize that you have to go home. So this was Moi.
Okay.
Yeah.
It has been said that if you look at the crop of leaders we've had the last 3 decades, perhaps Moi exemplified someone who had the interest of this country at heart. And one of the reasons that the people who worked closely with Moi thought that he was going to hold on is because of that real interest, that he did not foresee anyone who would take it to the next level. And if there were no change of the constitution, perhaps he would have not agreed to let it go until he was sure that there's someone who will take Kenya forward. Do you, ladies and gentlemen, agree on this?
I think for sure he had a deep love for Kenya and for the people. And beyond that, and that's why he played a very key role in East African community, in the African Union. Beyond that, he had a deep love for the black man, wherever he was. And he espoused views to support the cause of the black man, the cause of African unity, revived the East African community and Kenya. I think his love was genuine and it was very deep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fred, how did Moi's intelligence work? How did it work?
Well,
Number one, Moi always met the head of intelligence almost maybe twice, 3 times a week. Every morning. I mean, twice, 3 times a week, before 7. And they would brief him. Maybe they would brief him, the inspector of police. I mean, by then it was commissioner of police, the director of intelligence, the head of the army, differently. Then on top of that, he also met the ordinary people, because there's not even one single time that Moi would have lunch alone, and he would let people talk. And when he's having this luncheon, he would be having luncheon with people from different parts of this country.
Not necessarily
some who did not go to school, some who went to school, some professors and doctors and everybody mixed up for lunch, and you would be free to talk as much as you want. Then out of that, you might think he's not taking it seriously, but he would pick a few things from these people. And in some cases, he would ask questions about certain areas. So in most cases, whenever he used to tell us that, you see, when you get this information from the intelligence, that information has already been imechungwa.
Okay. He already knew, yes.
But the one you get from the ordinary man,
that's the one he took. What is this thing that we hear?
Not that he took it.
Okay.
But he would also not dismiss it.
Okay.
You see? Because in some cases, you would go there in the morning maybe, and he tells you something that happened in the Busia. In your village.
And
he would ask you, and you don't know.
No.
And he's already aware. You would never tell how he got that information. But he allowed people to talk freely. And you see, when you meet many people and you talk freely, you get a lot of information from every corner of this country.
Okay.
You see, so when you mix it with the usual one, the one that now the correct one,
yes,
and you do your own assessment, chances are that you will come up with very good information.
Okay.
And that's what he did.
And I think that's why, to be a member of the security, because I was part of the security also,
yes,
you had to be very, very on top of things. Because you could call you on the hotline, say you're the PC in Kakamega, and tell you what happened. And if you do not know, you in Kakamega, what happened, and he knows, you could be very, very embarrassed. So the provincial administration, the intelligence, they were all up to their mark. Because they knew any time Nyao can call. And they don't want to be embarrassed that they were not aware of what had happened.
Okay.
He would support the DC. He would support the DC without the PC's knowledge.
Yeah.
Or in some cases,
And it was not in subordination then?
no, even in some cases, even the DO.
He's the boss.
He's the boss.
Yes, even the DO.
Yes.
You would go to State House and you find your DO there. You see?
Some elders from the village.
Some elders from the village.
In the village.
You know, one time I went to his office in the morning and I found him. He had a book, a black book, like this. And in this book, he had the names of elders from different sublocations. Names written by hand. And they used to have very good handwriting.
With their phone numbers.
With their phone numbers. But you see, those days phones were not there. Whenever you wanted somebody from that village, you'd call the DC, and the DC would summon the person and bring him here. So, in fact, if Moi was living at this time when we had these telephones, mobile phones, nobody would ever beat him on getting information.
Okay.
But
I think the issue of accessibility for President Moi was high on his priorities. He was a very accessible individual, very accessible president. And maybe this is what we are seeing here is an attestation to that fact, that he could reach out to very many different people at different times. And then he mastered what the provincial administration then could do. I mean, he's somebody who really understood the instruments of state and how to use them to make sure that they're keeping you abreast of the events of the day. But let me just bring out one thing which you raised, and perhaps you have not addressed. You know, you raised the issue that people would have thought that he would not have relinquished power,
yes.
and he would have wanted to go on throughout. I think it's a school of thought that, in all fairness, I think needs to be debunked. Because, first of all, his upbringing was very humble. You know, this is something that we must really never forget. He's somebody who came from very humble beginnings, persevered as vice president for, is it 16 years? 11 years, and then became president. Now, after ushering in the multi-party era again in 1992, when Amos has said that they removed the Section 2A to move us from a one-party state, Moi said that he'll serve his 2 terms, and he did. And when time came for him to exit,
He did exit.
he did exit.
Yeah.
You know, in spite of the humiliation that was visited on him at Uhuru Park,
That's right.
with people mudslinging and throwing all sorts of things. He delivered the instruments of power and handed over to President Kibaki.
You have to agree, even him, he had that conversation with people.
So-
by the fact that he said that you think African leaders cannot leave, it means it was a concern at the back of his head.
Yes, but so he wanted to prove that the decent thing is that you could leave.
To leave when
So
it
on
comes
this
to-
one, it's a legacy that we should not take for granted.
Okay.
But he was also a nationalist. I remember in the early days of our independence, after Jeremy Oginga Odinga had resigned from the vice presidency, and then Murumbi came in. I was in the same ministry. And then in a very short time, Murumbi resigned while he was at the United Nations in New York. Moi came in, and we saw a nationalist. He wanted to know what we were doing that was different, our approach to the issues that affected the people under his ministry. He wanted to know whether we had something different from what the white men in that same ministry were doing. And he questioned you, and he listened to you, and if you had something different that was good for this country, he would make sure that it became a policy in that ministry. So in the early days of our independence, Moi displayed a real nationalistic leadership at that stage, and we were only about 4 or 5 years in independence, and he did it for those of us who are working under him.
Okay.